Welcome to Guilty Pleasure Stories channel that we hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching that I've lived with this way for years. It's the kind of thing you don't talk about, not with family, not with friends, and definitely not with strangers. But silence has its cost. It keeps you locked inside yourself, trapped with the echoes of your own pain. I can't live like that anymore. So here I am saying the words I've avoided for so long. I grew up in what most people would call an ordinary family. My brother, Liam Aiden, was the kind of person everyone loved. He had this easy charm, a way of making people laugh even when they didn't feel like it. My parents adored him. Teachers praised him to the outside world. He was perfect, and for a long time I believed that too. But there's a side to Elijah that no one else saw, a side that only revealed itself late at night when the rest of the house was asleep. I was 10 years old. The first time it happened, I woke up to find him in my room, standing by my bed. He said he couldn't sleep and asked if he could stay with me. I didn't think anything of it. He was my brother after all. Why would I? At first it was subtle, a hand lingering too long, a touch that felt wrong but was hard to define. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. But deep down I knew something was very, very wrong. I wish I could tell you I did something about it, that I screamed or told my parents or ran away, but I didn't. I froze every single time I froze, because what do you do when the person hurting you is someone you're supposed to love? Someone who's supposed to love you. I know there are people out there who've been through something similar. Maybe you were a child, too confused and scared, unsure of what was happening or why it was happening to you. Maybe, like me, you grew up carrying the weight of those experiences, unable to speak them aloud. If that's you, I want you to know you're not alone. This story isn't easy to tell. It's messy and painful and full of moments I wish I could forget. But it's my truth, and it's time I stopped running from it. So if you're here listening to this, I ask you to stay with me. Listen to what I have to say, because this isn't just about what happened to me. It's about what happens when we finally decide to face our past, no matter how dark it may be. If this story resonates with you, or you feel it could help someone else, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to hear more stories like this. Your support means everything to me as I continue to speak my truth. Camden Aiden was always the golden child. You know the type, the one who could do no wrong. He was 3 years older than me, and everyone seemed to adore him. My parents used to brag about his grades, his smile, the way he could charm anyone he met. Teachers loved him, neighbors waved to him, and even strangers would stop to tell my mom what a polite young man he was. From the outside we looked like the perfect family. My dad worked long hours but always made time for dinner at the table. My mom stayed home, keeping the house spotless and baking cookies that smelled like something out of a movie. We had birthday parties, family vacations, and matching Christmas sweaters. But looking back now, it's clear there were cracks beneath the surface. My dad had a temper. He never hit us, but the yelling was enough to make you feel small, like you'd done something terribly wrong. Even when you hadn't, my mom would smooth things over, acting like everything was fine, but the tension never really left and Kadena well. Liam knew how to stay out of trouble. He knew how to say the right thing, do the right thing, be the kid my parents could be proud of. I worshipped him when I was little. He was my big brother, my protector, the person who taught me how to ride a bike and shared his Halloween candy with me. He made me laugh when I was sad and stood up for me when other kids at school were mean. I loved him. I trusted him, and for a long time I thought he loved and protected me too. The first time something felt wrong, I was about 7. We were playing hide-and-seeker in the house, and I was hiding in the closet in my parents' room. Camden found me, but instead of tagging me and running off like he usually would, he sat down next to me. He told me it was our secret spot, that no one else would find us there. At the time, it felt special, like he'd chosen me to share this little secret with. But then he put his arm around me and let his hand linger in a way that didn't feel playful. I remember feeling confused more than anything. It wasn't scary, just strange, like something wasn't quite right. But I didn't know why. As the years went on, those moments became more frequent. He'd find reasons to sit too close to touch my arm or my leg, to tickle me in ways that felt less like playing and more like testing boundaries. I didn't understand it. I didn't know how to explain the knots in my stomach when he came into my room at night, or the way my skin crawled when he gave me a hug that lasted just a little too long. I told myself it was normal, that I was overthinking it, that brothers and sisters were supposed to be close, But the older I got, the harder it became to believe those lies. By the time I was 10, I was terrified of him. I hated going to sleep knowing he might come into my room. I hated the way he smiled at me like he knew something I didn't. And I hated myself for not saying anything, for not doing anything to make it stop. But how could I? He was Kadena, the one everyone loved, the one my parents always praised. If I said something, who would believe me? Who would want to believe that their perfect son could do something so awful? There was this one night, I think I was 13, when I finally worked up the courage to tell my mom I didn't want to share a room with him. When we went to visit my grandparents, I told her I wanted my own space, that I was getting older and needed privacy. She laughed and said, "Oh honey, Elijah wouldn't hurt a fly. Don't be silly," and that was it. That was the end of the conversation. So I kept quiet. I stayed quiet for years. But the silence came at a cost. I couldn't look at him without feeling a mix of anger, fear, and guilt. I still loved him. I didn't know how not to. He was my brother, but I also hated him for what he'd done, for what he was still doing. That conflict tore me apart. How do you love someone who's hurt you in ways you can't even put into words? How do you hate someone you're supposed to love? I didn't have answers then. I still don't have all the answers now, but I do know one thing. Pretending it didn't happen didn't make it go away. It didn't make the memories any less real. It didn't make the pain any less sharp, and it didn't make me feel any less alone. Thanksgiving was always a big deal in our family. My mom loved to cook, and everyone would come together. Cousins, aunts, uncles, all crammed into one house, sharing food and stories. It was supposed to be a time for laughter and love. But for me, it was the night everything changed. I was 18 by then. I'd mastered the art of pretending. Pretending everything was fine. Pretending I didn't dread family gatherings where I'd have to be around Camden. Pretending I wasn't haunted by memories of the nights he'd come into my room, doing things I couldn't even bring myself to think about, let alone say out loud. But that night I couldn't pretend anymore. The day had been chaotic like always. The kitchen was full of clattering dishes and chatter. My mom was barking orders about the turkey. My dad was joking with my uncles, and Camden was being Kadena, charming everyone, making people laugh, helping my mom carry plates to the table. You'd look at him and think he was the perfect son, the perfect brother. But I couldn't look at him without feeling sick. Dinner came and went. Everyone was full and happy, sprawled out in the living room, watching football or catching up. I remember wanting to escape the noise, the laughter, the sight of Elijah sitting there like he hadn't stolen pieces of me. I could never get back, so I went upstairs to the guest room, hoping for a moment of quiet. I should have locked the door. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe part of me thought he wouldn't follow me anymore, that I was too old, or that he'd finally changed. But I was wrong. It didn't take long before I heard the door creak open behind me. I froze like I always did, and there he was standing in the doorway, smiling like nothing was wrong. He sat on the edge of the bed, making some excuse about wanting to talk, asking if I was okay. I don't remember what I said, probably something dismissive, trying to get him to leave, but he didn't. Instead, he reached out, putting his hand on mine, then moving it to my leg. And before I could stop him, before I could say anything, his hand was somewhere it had no right to be. It only lasted a few seconds. I think he saw the look on my face, the horror, the anger. He laughed like it was a joke and got up, saying something about how I shouldn't take everything so seriously. Then he walked out, leaving me sitting there shaking, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I didn't go back downstairs that night. I couldn't. I stayed in that room, staring at the wall, feeling dirty and broken and so angry. Since that night, I've done everything I can to avoid him. I don't go to family gatherings unless I'm sure he won't be there. I've blocked his number, ignored his texts, and pretended not to see him when we cross paths in public. But no matter how far I run, he's always there in the back of my mind. And when I do see him, I laugh. I don't know why. Maybe it's my way of pretending it doesn't bother me, of convincing myself that I'm over it. But I know he knows. I see it in his eyes. The way he avoids looking at me for too long. The way he tries to act like everything is normal. He knows what he did, and he knows I remember. I've tried to move on. I've gone to therapy, read books about healing, done everything I can to put the past behind me. And for the most part, I'm okay. But then I'll see him or hear his name or catch a glimpse of someone who looks like him, and it all comes rushing back. The shame, the anger, the guilt. I hate that he still has that power over me. I hate that after all these years, I'm still trying to figure out how to take it back. So if you're wondering why I'm telling this story now, it's because I'm done running. I'm done pretending this isn't just about what happened that night or the nights before it. It's about finally standing up and saying this happened. It was real and it wasn't my fault. I'm saying it for myself and for anyone else who's ever been made to feel like their pain doesn't matter. It does you do. Sometimes I wonder why it still comes back to me. It's been years, decades really. I've built a life for myself, moved forward in ways I never thought I could. I've gone to therapy, worked through the memories and told myself over and over again that I'm stronger than what happened to me. But still there are moments when it feels as fresh as the day it happened. It's not constant, not like it used to be, but there are triggers, holidays, family gatherings, or even just a familiar smell or song that brings it all rushing back. And when it does, I catch myself thinking, what if I just asked him, what if I confronted him and made him admit what he did? But then I remind myself that some answers don't bring peace. They just open old wounds. I don't think I'll ever fully understand why he did it. Was it a power thing? Was it something deep or something broken in him? Or was it just because he could? These are questions I'll never have the answers to, and I've learned to accept that. I've learned that healing isn't about getting closure from the person who hurt you. It's about finding it within yourself, and for me, that's meant taking back the narrative, choosing to speak to own my story instead of letting it own me. But even now when I see him when we're in the same room at a wedding or a family event, I can't help but laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's the only way I know how to cope. It's this strange nervous habit, like my body's way of pretending everything is fine, and I can see it in his face. He knows exactly what I'm laughing at, what I'm really thinking. And I think that terrifies him more than anything. I used to hate him for what he did, for the way he stole my innocence, my trust, and part of me still does. But now I mostly pity him because while I've done the work to move forward to heal, he's the one who has to live with himself. He's the one who has to carry the knowledge of what he did every single day. So to anyone watching this who's gone through something similar, know this. You're not alone and your pain is valid. No matter how long ago it happened or how much you've tried to bury it. Healing isn't linear, it's messy and it takes time. But it's possible, and it starts with acknowledging your truth, even when it's hard. And to my brother, if you're watching this, you know what you did. I've spent too many years wondering why, but I'm done letting those questions take up space. In my mind, this isn't about you anymore. It's about me taking back my power. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. It's not easy to talk about, but I hope it helps someone out there feel a little less alone. If you can relate, or if you have thoughts about why these memories linger, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment and share your opinion. I'm genuinely curious, and my story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel.